In the basics section, we walk through the steps of creating a daisy chain configuration and a redundant configuration. In both of these situations, we used a single console and two R-Series I/O racks. In the advanced network section, we talked about things like unit ID, bit depth, and latency. Now we're going to talk about multiple console setups. Multiple console setups involve two or more consoles and some R-Series I/O racks. When using two or more consoles with their R-Series racks, gain compensation becomes very important. The reason is you're sharing a single mic pre between these consoles. Let's walk through the steps of using multiple console configurations. For this example, I'll be at the CL5 at front of house.
While Leland is working at the front of house, I will be working at the monitor mix position. I have a pair of R-Series I/O racks and a QL5.
While Jose is at monitors working on his QL5, I'm going to be up at front of house working on the CL5. The first thing I need to do is verify that my word clock settings are correct. This is done by touching where it says Setup and then touching on the word clock icon. Here I can see that my console is set to Dante 48K, and that's perfect. That means that my console will receive its clock signal from the network. In some cases, you may want your console to clock internally, maybe because you're sending clock signal from another device, or you just want to use the internal clock of the console. In these cases, please make sure that only one of the two consoles on the network is set to clock internally. The other one should be clocking from the Dante network. The next step is to change our unit ID. I can change my unit ID by touching where it says I/O device and then touching on Dante setup. In this case, I want to make sure that my console is set to unit ID number 2. When I set my console to unit ID number 2, this is going to do two things. It's going to make sure that there's only one console on the network with unit ID number 1 and one console on the network with unit ID number 2. The other thing it does is change the Dante patch by parameter. The Dante patch by parameter makes sure that I can't make any changes to the Dante network from my console. All changes that I wish to do to the Dante network has to be done from the Dante controller program. Jose can still make changes to the network from his console, which is perfect. Next, I'm going to change the bit depth. The bit depth will be changed from 24-bit to 32. When changing the bit depth to 32-bit, that gives us more dynamic range on the network to make sure that as we adjust gain compensation, we don't have any areas where it goes below the minimum. Finally, we're going to go ahead and check our remote HA assign parameters. The remote HA assign parameters decides who's going to be recalling the head amp when they recall a scene. By default, your console is set to automatically recall head amp settings when you recall a scene. When you have two consoles on the network, it's really pretty rare that you're going to have both consoles recalling the scene at the same time. Since Jose is at Monitor World, we're going to leave him in charge of recalling head amps with his scenes. I'm going to change this setting so that when I recall a scene, my settings do not change the head amps on the R-Series devices.
Let's now set the monitor console. By going to the Setup and Dante Setup, I can make sure that my console is on ID 1. I will change from 24 to 32-bit, and that will improve my network performance. I will make sure that my console is the one making the recalls for the head amp changes. Last, I will check on my word clock settings. My current setting has Dante 48K, and I can use that for this configuration, so I don't need to change it.
Now that we have both consoles set up and on the network, let's talk about gain compensation. Each of your R-Series devices has a head amp that can be controlled by up to 4 consoles. Because of this, it's important that a change made by one engineer doesn't affect a mix created by another engineer. gain compensation makes sure that this doesn't happen. It makes sure that the level on the network stays consistent no matter who adjusts the head amp. It's also good when using the window live for recording because the level to your network will remain consistent. Let's take a look at how we set up gain compensation.
Now that the I/O racks are connected and my Dante patch, it's getting the signal from the 64 inputs on the I/O racks to the 64 inputs on the console, it starts working with the input level. By opening the head amp page, I can have a more detailed view of my controls. On the left side of the white line, I have the parameters that are related to the I/O rack. Those are the phantom power, the analog gain, and the gain compensation. On the right side of the white line, I have my digital gain and my AG/DG link. Those parameters are related to the console. I will start by adjusting my input gain. As you can see, I'm adjusting my analog gain to reach a good input level. Once I have a good signal level, I will turn gain compensation on. The blue triangle represents the audio level within the network. If I adjust the analog gain, I am not changing the level going to the network. If I channel clips, I can turn gain compensation off, adjust my gain, and turn gain compensation on one more time.
Jose is at the monitor position, and we've put him in charge of adjusting the analog side of the gain, as well as turning gain compensation on and off. If I open up my gain window, you can see the level that he's already set, and you can also see that gain compensation is turned on. I still have control of the analog gain, and I can still turn gain compensation on and off as well. The reason for this is that that gain compensation circuit is located inside of that R-Series device. So both of us have real-time views of what's going on with the gain compensation as well as the analog gain. The gain compensation circuit is available in your R-Series devices as well as your QL-Series consoles. So it doesn't matter which one you use to place audio on the network, you can view that gain compensation circuit in real time and make adjustments to it from your CL or your QL-Series console. Since Jose is in charge of the analog gain within our system, I'm going to make some changes to my console so that I'm working off of this digital gain here. This will allow me to set a separate level if I want to have my console signal a little bit hotter or a little bit colder than his. To make things a little bit easier for myself, I'm going to change my preference. Here under User Setup, you can access the Preference page. And on this page, you have an option of changing your gain knob function from analog gain control over to digital gain control. By doing this on my CL-Series console, now when I grab this gain knob here, I'm adjusting the digital gain instead of the analog gain. If I still wish to have access to the analog gain, I have two ways that I can get there. One way is to touch user-defined key number 3 and activate the alternate function. This is assigned here by default. Another way to access that analog gain circuit is to assign it to one of my user-defined knobs. Finally, the last thing we're going to do is change our meter point. By changing the meter point, that's going to allow me to see exactly what's going on when I make an adjustment post-digital gain. I have that option here. Now we're all set to go and ready to work with 2 consoles and 2 R-Series devices.
When working with multiple consoles and a set of I/O racks, please remember to check your console ID and make sure that you pick which console is going to recall head amps.
Also remember to check your word clock settings. And keep in mind, the Yamaha gain compensation system makes using a single set of R-Series I/O racks with multiple consoles really easy. No matter who adjusts head amp control, all the levels on the network will remain the same. Be sure to use it on your next event.